Victor's gaze bore into me, his ever-present smile a mask of unsettling calm. I forced myself to return it, though my stomach churned with dread. I had no choice but to play along, for now. Emily stood between us, silent, her expression unreadable. The weight of the entity's presence clung to her like a shadow, its grip tightening with every passing moment. I had to act fast, but one wrong move could doom us both. Victor extended his arm toward Emily. "Come, my love," he said, his voice smooth as silk. Emily hesitated for a fraction of a second before placing her hand in his. I suppressed a shudder. There was still a chance. If I could separate her from him, if I could delay the wedding long enough, I might find a way to break the entity's hold. We walked in silence through the grand halls of Blackwood Manor, the dim candlelight casting grotesque shapes along the walls. The air grew heavier with each step, thick with an oppressive energy that made it hard to breathe. The guests were waiting in the grand ballroom, their murmurs a low rhythmic hum that sent chills down my spine. As we entered, all conversation ceased. Every head turned toward us in unison, their smiles eerily identical. A chill ran down my spine. These were not guests. They were something else, something inhuman. My heart pounded as I scanned the room, searching for an escape, an opportunity. The room itself was breathtaking. High-vaulted ceilings adorned with intricate chandeliers, walls lined with towering stained glass windows depicting scenes of weddings from centuries past. But beneath its beauty lay something sinister, something ancient and wrong. At the far end of the ballroom stood an altar draped in crimson silk. An old priest, his face lined with age and something far darker, waited beside it, hands clasped in silent anticipation. The moment we approached, he lifted his head, his eyes hollow yet burning with an unnatural light. "The time has come," he intoned, his voice carrying an eerie finality. I fought to keep my expression neutral as Victor guided Emily forward. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to intervene, to rip her away from this nightmare. But I had to be smart. If I acted too soon, I'd fail. If I waited too long, I'd lose her forever. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Wait," I said, my voice steady despite the terror curling in my gut. Victor turned to me, his smile never faltering. "Yes?" he asked, his tone light, almost amused. I scrambled for an excuse. "Shouldn't we have a moment before the ceremony?" I gestured toward Emily, who stood motionless, her fingers twitching slightly. A bride and her loved ones usually share a final moment before everything changes. The priest's expression darkened, but Victor chuckled. "Ah, a sentimental one, I see." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, a moment, but only a moment." Relief flooded through me as he stepped back, allowing me to approach Emily. Her skin was ice cold as I took her hands in mine. Her gaze met mine, flickering with something: recognition, fear. "Emily," I whispered, squeezing her fingers, "listen to me. You don't have to do this." For a second she didn't respond. Then, ever so slightly, she shook her head. A small motion, almost imperceptible, but it was enough. She was still in there, fighting. I had to give her something to hold on to. "Remember our trip to the lake?" I murmured. "The way we laughed when the boat almost tipped over?" Her fingers twitched. I pressed on. "Remember the bakery in town? Your favorite pastries? You always made me try them first." Her breath hitched. I saw something shift in her eyes, a flicker of awareness, of resistance. But before she could respond, Victor's voice cut through the air. "That's enough." His tone was sharp, devoid of its usual charm. He stepped forward, grabbing Emily's wrist and pulling her toward the altar. She stumbled, and for the first time I saw true fear in her expression. My blood turned to ice. The priest raised his hands, beginning to chant in a language I didn't recognize. The air vibrated with power, the walls seeming to close in around us. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the room, originating from nowhere and everywhere at once. The guests, if they could be called that, began to sway, their mouths moving in unison with the priest's incantation. Emily struggled against Victor's grip, her breaths coming in sharp gasps. "No," she whispered. "No, I don't." A violent wind tore through the ballroom, extinguishing the candles in an instant. Shadows erupted from the corners of the room, writhing like living things. A voice, low and insidious, slithered through the air. "The bride is mine." Panic surged through me. I couldn't wait any longer. I lunged forward, grabbing Emily's free hand. "Run!" I shouted, yanking her toward me with all my strength. The moment our hands connected, a deafening scream ripped through the air. The room trembled, the stained glass windows shattering in a cascade of crimson and gold. The entity howled in rage, its shadowy tendrils lashing toward us. Victor's grip tightened on Emily, his face contorting into something monstrous. "You cannot take her," he snarled, his voice layered with something inhuman. Emily gasped, her strength suddenly surging. With a final, desperate effort, she wrenched free from Victor's grasp and stumbled into my arms. The entity shrieked, its form twisting, writhing, furious. The guests turned in unison, their eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger. We had only seconds. Without thinking, I pulled Emily toward the nearest doorway, shoving through the chaos. "This way." The moment we crossed the threshold, the heavy doors slammed shut behind us, sealing the horror within. Emily collapsed against me, trembling. What was that?" she whispered. I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that we weren't safe yet. The wedding wasn't over, and Blackwood Manor wasn't done with us.